Howdy, men, and whoever else might be watching. I was asked to do a video on motorcycle maintenance, which I don't mind doing that, but it's going to affect very few people. Although this, unless you have a Harley exactly like mine, this is pretty much a waste of time to go over each part individually. But what I can do is give a general idea, and this would even go for maintenance on a car too, to a degree. Some things to look out for and things to check and what to do. So I'm gonna kind of go over it quickly here to begin with, and I'll be cutting it on and off as I go along. There's no sense in showing the whole job routine, like I said. This isn't going to apply to a lot of people anyway. But, okay, so the first thing I've done, which of course a lot of you won't have, and that's a motorcycle lift. And I put the bike up on the lift, obviously. And I've got it strapped down. If you do have a lift, remember to strap the thing down. It'll help in case this clamp up here takes a crap, which they have been known to do, because there's a thin washer in there holding that screw piece together, and these have broken. I've seen that piece of metal, the end piece, the welded piece, break right out. So anyway, first thing that you want to do, and by the way, I'm doing a major service on this bike. I've done my oil changes in between, but every 10,000 or so I like to do a major on it, which will include a lot more than just oil. It'll include the transmission, and of course the first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and drop the oil. You want to go ahead and start draining the oil. That way, while you're doing other things on the bike or the car, whatever the case may be, all the oil will have time to drain. Now the best way, of course, to drain is with a hot engine. And that's not always possible. So, you know, if you get it warm, that'll be good enough, just to get everything mixed up in there, have everything draining. Of course, if it's not hot, it'll take longer to drain, because usually motorcycle oil is a little bit thicker. In the case of the Harley, the old Harleys used to run 70 weight. This one runs 20/50. So anyway, the basics here is to do that, and I drain the oil as long as I can before I loosen the filter, because the filter on this bike is in a bad spot. Like most motorcycles, you know, there's not a lot of room, and the filter being right there. Now I've got a washable filter. You know, it's right on top of the motor mount, which is rubber, so you got to make up a little you know, I used to have a cardboard piece. Now I got a cutout milk carton that I stuff up under there, but it still gets everywhere. So, you know, basic things you want to go over while the oil is draining. If you have a belt drive or a chain, you want to give that a good inspection. Make sure that it's not too loose, not too tight, that no rocks have gotten in there. There's no damage on the belt or chain or the teeth, the gears of the pulleys. And, you know, while it's up in the air, of course, you want to check your tread, your tire tread, to make sure that's good, that you're not down to the wear bars. And I do replace tires when it gets down to the wear bars. I don't wait until I'm completely flat. You want to check certain things, you know, swing arm integrity, all the mounting bolts, that they're good and tight. In my case, I've got a reinforced swing arm, because the original ones were so weak that on a heavy bike like this they used to break, and my first one did break. So, and they break right under the axle part, so that's because this has too much flex in it. Therefore I've welded on these plates. So anyway, again, you want to make sure that all your lights and everything, all the lenses are in good shape, that they're clear. You want to make sure that things like your mufflers are nice and tight. In the case of this bike, I have rubber muffler hangers, because the engine is rubber mounted, so it's going to move. But you want to make sure that all these things, because they do move around with the vibration of the bike and the road, So all that has to be good and tight. Also, you want to check the engine and transmission over for any type of leaks coming out of the valve covers, the heads, the cylinders, any base gaskets, or anywhere. You shouldn't see any oil leaking out. It might have a little bit of, a breathing of oil that you can see where it just looks a little hazy. Well, that's usually a sign that it's going to get worse, so you've got time. You don't have to jump on it right away. But anything that's dripping or running, you need to address that immediately. And remember, we're talking about a motorcycle here, not not a car where you have four wheels and you're a little bit safer. You want to check all the hardware, all your wiring. This bike, we'll get into it later. It has a lot of grease fittings on it. We'll be doing the air cleaner, which is a washable air cleaner. It's a K&N filter. And we are doing the transmission. Now, I'm not going to get into the big debate about what oils to use or anything like that. Everybody's going to have their preference. This is an argument that's been going on with mechanics and drivers alike for ages. I prefer to use synthetic oil, but that's me. And for the transmission, anywhere I can, I'll use synthetic. And the other thing you want to check too is any of your cables. If you have cables, now a lot of clutches are hydraulic nowadays. This is still a cable clutch, and you're going to want to check in there pretty good. Make sure that where it pivots isn't starting to fray. You don't want a clutch cable breaking on you, and you want all your cables to be lubricated up too, and I'm going to address that in a little bit later, what I use to lubricate the cables up. Now, I'm not going to be putting plugs into it this time around, because I think I had plugs. I got to check my notes, but things like linkages. I'm going to be checking the primary chain too. Now, a lot of motorcycles don't have a primary chain. Most of them don't. Not one that you can service. The Harley does. So there's a chain in here, there's a tensioner, a slider, and there's also 1 quart of oil in here, which we'll be changing along with the service. So that's the basic starting point. And I'm going to get back to work on this, and we'll start it up again in a little bit. So in case anybody's wondering what a washable oil filter looks like, I have the Flow. That's brand name is Flow, F-L-O-W, and it's a billet aluminum housing. Now, I've already cleaned this, and this is I would imagine a metal mesh type filter with a proper micron rating for this motor engine, if you like. These are meant to be cleaned, or washed, as we call it, in solution. That you can use carburetor cleaner, brake cleaner. I use safety clean fluid, but usually people aren't going to have safety clean. So any type of spray brake cleaner or carb cleaner, and then compressed air to blow it out. And I'll show you quickly how this one goes together in case anybody's interested. So the spring goes in the bottom, obviously. The filter is indexed and goes into 4 or 3 grooves like this, gets pushed down and then turned into the notches here, and that holds it all together. So when you thread it onto the engine, it actually pulls on the filter, which pulls on the housing. So there's no chance of that coming apart. Anyway, there it is. There's that type of filter. And these, to me, make a lot more sense because motorcycle filters are really expensive, especially for this bike. They're going around between $8 and $9 or $10, even more dollars. I've seen them as high as $14 for a filter. They get you coming and going on a motorcycle. So I bought this, and I don't remember what I paid for it. I've had it so damn long, and actually I may be mistaken about the price on oil filters because I haven't bought them in so long. So anyway, yeah, there's the washable oil filter. And when I get to going on the air cleaner, the K&N air cleaner, when I say washable on that, I also don't mean washing it in water, soap and water, or that doesn't need to, or it shouldn't ever be washed out with any type of carb cleaner. They make a recharge kit. K&N makes a recharge kit that is very cost efficient. The cleaner is fantastic. I've never seen anything bring a filter back to life like that. And then there's an oil spray that after the filter's dried out again, that you coat the filter with, because K&N needs oil to filter the air. So we'll hit on that in a little bit, and I'm going to clean up my oil spill here that somehow I got anyway. I don't know, running down the frame, even though I've got my little milk carton in there, and it got on the motor mount anyway. There's just no helping it. This is a really bad area, but there it is. Okay, another point of interest here on number one, on the oil filter. Remember to clean the gasket surfaces really good. The O-ring that's on the housing of the filter, take your finger, dip it in a little bit of oil, and give it a good coating of oil on that O-ring. Don't leave any dirt or grit or old oil on that mating surface. Alright, that being said, the other thing I wanted to address is the drain plugs. Now, this one here takes an O-ring, and some of them take a paper gasket, some of them take a copper gasket. These need to be replaced every time you do an oil change, okay? Like it or not. If you have to, go to your dealer. They're not very expensive, and buy a handful of them if you do your own work. That's what I do. I go over to Harley, and I hate going to the dealer, but they're the only ones that really have this, and I just buy about 4 or 5 of them at a time. You really don't want to have more than that unless you're doing oil changes every couple of months, and you're going to use them up, because they are rubber and they will dry out. So basically on something like this, this is the old O-ring, and what you want to do is, good grief, I can't get under it, I can't see. I'm wearing my wrong glasses here, but okay. You want to get under there and just yank that old O-ring off, and you can see that it was fraying already, and that was a new O-ring last time I did an oil change. So this is why you want to do it. And also, I might add that if you have a torque wrench, use it. Oil drain plugs like this are usually torqued anywhere from 14 to 20 pounds. Use that torque because it's going into aluminum. Most engines on a bike are made of aluminum, and you want to use the proper torque. You don't want to over tighten it and pull the threads out. And this here again, take your finger, dab it in a little oil, put a little oil on that so the rubber doesn't twist going in. And also on the caps, if like on my transmission cap here, there's an O-ring on that too, and that occasionally needs to be replaced. Now these things here are just finger tight, a little bit more than finger tight. So get whatever you need and have it ready so that when you're doing the work, you've got all this. And like I said, torque. Keep a torque wrench handy. If you don't have a torque wrench handy, do it with a really light touch. But I would really recommend, even if you get a cheap beam style torque wrench, that's better than nothing. So sometimes they're hard to get up under there, but you're going to have to use a torque wrench properly. And if you're using extensions, don't worry about it too much. If you have an offset, then it changes your torque. But if you have a straight extension, just set it to the predetermined specification and use that. So, alright, just wanted to add that. While I'm thinking of it, I take a lot of these things for granted. I just do them, and because I've been doing this shit so long, and I forget that sometimes people that haven't done it a lot or forget what to do. I'll try to include whatever comes to mind. Okay, and another thought here. Number one, if you're just getting started with this, make sure that you have the right type of funnels for what's going to work where you want it to go, because not one funnel is going to work everywhere on a motorcycle. You've got hidden places, and the same is true for a car too. A lot of the transmission fills are going to be different, and yeah, I just got this one in an old oil can. That way, when you're done using it, you can let it drip out in the oil can. But this one here is going to be for the transmission, and as you can see, the oil is for a different size, and that holds up in there real good too. Now, I could try to pour that thick-ass oil through this, but it'll take forever. It's bad enough with the transmission oil. The other thing that you might want to get, depending on what the specs are for the fluids in your bike, sometimes it's not always cut and dry. In my case, you want to get a measuring cup. Something like this, you can get it at any hardware store, usually in the garden department. This is called a ratio right. This is a nice measuring cup because it has all these different measurements on it, depending on metric, US, and ounces, pints, and everything else. So if like my bike takes about 22 ounces of transmission fluid, I can measure that out in here, just turn it over, and I don't have to worry about overfilling it, which isn't good at all. Underfilling it isn't that great either. But it is a dry sump, so it's not the end of the world on a constant mesh tranny. But these are cheap. I mean, they're only a couple bucks or a buck, whatever. Go get you some of that, and like I said, get the right funnels. Funnels are also cheap. Keep them in a clean place, let them drip out, and then wipe them out and put them somewhere with a cloth in them so they don't accumulate spiders and any of those type of things. So, alright, I just wanted to mention that, and by the way, this is the type of torque wrench that I use here. This is, of course, a snap-on with a flex head, and the flex head type makes it a lot easier to get into certain places. Again, whether you're working on a car or a motorcycle, it doesn't much matter. This is my low yield wrench in inch pounds. Now for the for the primary, over there I'm going to be doing some very small screws, and I'm going to need an inch pound. And for that I have a beam type. I don't have a clicker type because I really don't do a lot of inch pound, and that works out just fine. And you do not want to over torque these things because they don't like to come out, and they will ruin metal. Alright, so I'll pick it up again when I think about something else. Okay, next thing on the agenda, fasteners. And we've been talking about oil drain plugs and torque values and everything else that need to be adhered to. And let me mention, you might do well to invest in a shop manual. Your owner's manual will more than likely not have this information in it, or you could probably look it up online for torque specs, but do find them. Now, on this side of the bike, we have a different set of things going on here. We've got a multitude of Torx fasteners, and Torx are these little things here, which are quite they're touchy. You can round them out very quickly. And also make sure that in the case of this Harley here, it doesn't take what you're going to get with a standard kit. This is a T27 bit, which isn't a standard kit type bit. So do not use a T25, which is going to be very loose, so you're going to round them out. Again, the beam style torque wrench for inch pounds, what I use here is this one, because these small head torques are not going to be very tight. They're going to be around the 60-pound mark, I believe. But I need to look that up again. And the other thing is the drain plug on this primary is a pipe thread. So it's a tapered pipe thread. It's also Torx, but this Torx is a standard size Torx. Now with a pipe thread, a tapered pipe thread, if you over tighten this, you'll split the case. You'll just split it. I mean, it'll keep tightening. So with these, what I do, and you're not really supposed to wrap these in Teflon tape, but I do no more than two turns of the Teflon tape around this. When I turn it in, I use a very small type ratchet, like one of these, and I just give it enough to, once it's hand tight, I do maybe another half to 3/4 turn with it, and that's it. It'll feel a little bit loose, but trust me, that's a lot better. And for any of you guys with Harleys that want to check your chain tension, this inspection cover, if you have one, most of them do, your chain is going to be somewhere in the area of 5/8 to 3/4 inch, I think it is. And what I do is I touch the top of the chain, because we're pretty much in the middle of the rung here, and let me see, I'll use this bottom edge as a guide. So right now I can feel the chain. We're at 4 inches. I push up on the chain. We got a 1/2 inch. So we got, just about a 1/2 inch of play on the chain. And I believe it is a 1/2 inch to 5/8 then. In either case, that's good. I'm not going to touch that. But if it did need to be adjusted, this is the adjuster nut, which has little teeth in the back, steps that you can move it up one step at a time. It gets a little bit funky doing that, so don't over tighten it. You'd rather have it a little loose in there, because it will get tighter in time. And you can look at your sprockets, from whatever you can see. And if you're not getting a lot of metal or anything, you're going to get some clutch material. That's fine, that dark black crap, because the clutch is in here also. And this does have a specific torque. If you don't torque this and put a new nylock nut, this is a nylon locking nut, these will come loose, and you definitely don't want that happening. That'll raise hell. So alright, that will kill this portion on the fasteners, and I think I've covered them all. Of course, the Allen heads, everybody knows what those are, but you want to have the proper tools. Don't use an American where a metric is needed. Don't use it, don't mess around. Get the right tool. All right, we'll pick it up again in a little. Okay, primary is back together again. It's got the oil in it. And by the way, people, make sure that you're using the proper types of fluids. You don't always have to go with the most expensive. My primary takes regular 40 weight oil. A lot of guys will use the primary oil that is made for that by Harley or some other company, and it's overkill. In my opinion, I've never felt any difference. In either case, alright, I've got the air cleaner off, air filter and everything, and now's a good time to take a nice clean cloth and wipe off any excess dirt that you've got in here and oil. Now my bike's got over 115,000 miles on it, so there's some blow-by to be expected, a little bit of oil, and it's really not that bad at all. I mean, there's hardly anything there. There's a little bit down here, and I believe that was mostly from the air cleaner. And this is the filter here. As you can see, it's kind of dark, or maybe it doesn't show up on the camera that well, but it is kind of dark. And I've gotten my spray cleaner. Let me set this down, see if this will work. This is part of the recharge kit from K&N, and this cleaner is really fantastic. And all you do is basically soak the air filter with this stuff, and it'll loosen all the dirt. It'll loosen the old oil, and you spray the inside and the outside. Give it a good soaking. And I think these recharge kits are only like 12 bucks or something like that. They're not a lot, and they're made for their filters. So basically you spray it a little bit extra where the heavy dirt is. I think I got that. Okay. And you let it sit for 10 minutes. Don't let it sit in the sun, it'll dry up. And then basically you take a hose and you wash it out. And I'll get back and I'll show you after it's all cleaned up, and then we'll dry it out. Okay, now that we've cleaned our filter, this is what it looks like afterwards. As you can see, all the black is gone, all the red is gone. The red was the oil. And of course you don't want to wash this out with a hose, with a high pressure stream, but have it on a spray, you know, with a fair amount of force behind it. Now, with these, you do not want to use compressed air to dry them out. If you do, it's got to be very far away and not very high pressure. What I usually do is, you know, I put it out here in the sunlight, let it bake for a while, it'll dry out, and in the meantime, do some other things on the bike. And again, this is a lot of checkout, a lot of looking at things like heat shields. You know, check your heat shields, make sure that none of them are loose and rattling. Exhaust pipes, if you can see them, make sure there are no cracks in there or any black stuff around your exhaust where it might be leaking, because that'll definitely burn a valve. And then also, you want to find all the grease fittings. In other words, sometimes you have to look. Now, I've added a few to this bike. The front center stand has a grease fitting right under there. I drilled this one in for a pedal, and it's right there. And all you want to do is get a little bit to come out the end, nothing crazy, and I just leave that there because it's the bottom of the bike. It's not going to affect anything. It might grab a little bit of dirt, but it'll keep the water out of there. And my neck bearings, the steering bearings up here, they have two grease fittings too. These are mostly factory, and I've added some myself. The shifter, that has a grease fitting right there. And anything else that needs to be lubricated, such as cables and levers, what I use is this HHSK made by Worth. Now, this stuff used to be called HHS 2000, I believe. We used it at the Benz shop when I worked there. This stuff is great. It comes out in a spray and it emulsifies. It's a clear grease, so it doesn't show like the white lithium grease, which doesn't penetrate. This actually penetrates into where you're shooting it, and then it becomes stiffer. So I think a can of this is around 20 bucks. And it has a lot of uses actually around the house too. But on a motorcycle, it's very waterproof. And what you want to do is use it on anything that moves. In other words, your brake lever in here. Now you want to clean it off if you've been using any type of grease, so that there isn't dirt there, and you want to spray into all those nooks and crannies, especially where the pivot point is. Now usually I'll take this cover off of my throttle, and I'll expose the throttle cables, and I'll spray them, and also fill up some of the throttle cable, you know, with a little bit of the liquid, because this stuff does run until it thickens up, which is another really nice thing. And you want to use it on anything that moves, anything that has a hinge. Clutch cable with a pivot, you want to get in there. I've cleaned these up, I haven't sprayed them yet. Things like your floorboards that have a notch in them with a spring and a ball. You want to get the lube in there. You want to get the lube into anything that moves like this. These are auxiliary foot pegs for the passenger. You know, on my bike I've got these armrests here that my wife used to really enjoy, and I just haven't taken them off. I'm leaving them on. And again, there's that type of a ball with a spring and a pivot joint, so all that needs to be lubricated. Even things like on the saddlebags, you want to lubricate the hinges of here, and when you open them up, you've got more hinge material in there. Same thing for things like your tour pack. You want to lubricate these little hinges and actually the latches as well, so that you get good lubrication in there. It doesn't dry out. It doesn't, get real hard to use. So once you've done that, you want to go around and you want to get a flashlight. You want to get a good flashlight and go around and do a safety check. You want to check your brake pads. You want to check your rotors, make sure that the rotors are nice and smooth, even wear, that you don't have high and low spots that you would feel in pulsating mode, or any bluing going on where they become blue from overheating. You want to check your brake lines for any type of leaks. Of course, you want to check your brake fluid reservoir, which you'll have one for your rear brakes and then one for your front brakes. And again, you want to check the front brakes. You want to go in there. You want to take a look, and sometimes they're very hard to see, but with a good flashlight, you can take a look in there, and you can see that. You want to shake the wheels, of course, when it's down on the ground, to make sure that none of the wheel bearings are getting loose, or check your axle nuts to make sure that those are in good shape. Any of the fork slider caps are in good shape. Your axle nuts are tight. These have a pin in them on this model, but some of them have a nylock nut, so all this stuff can come loose. So you want to go around the bike, you want to shake things, make sure that everything's in good shape. If you have a battery that takes water, distilled water, of course, check your battery, open it up, take the little caps off, and look. Most batteries are sealed. I've got an AGM battery in this. It's a sealed battery, so I don't have to look at it and not worry about it. Other lubrication points would be things like the shift linkage, which this one's getting quite loose here, and this is the third one I put on this bike. But check that your shifter levers, your brake pedals, anything on the bike, hoses, fuel line hoses, that they're not dry rotting and cracked. On the Harley, you've got a crossover hose in the front, and you see this one here, it's just starting. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just starting to get a little dry rot at the end there. So that'll probably be a good thing to replace next time I get low on fuel, so I don't have a big mess. And you want to check your tire pressures. You want to do that at least once a month, if not more. I prefer to check it almost every time before I go out, especially as the weather cools down. You're going to have a lot of discrepancy in the tire pressures, so that should be checked all the time, but now's a good time to do it anyway. If you have an air over suspension, like this bike has, in other words, I've got air shocks in the rear and I've got an air suspension in the front too, and these will need to be checked. Now I've got two Schrader valves right here that go for the front end and the back, and you'll need a special pump for that. So and those pumps you can get on eBay relatively cheap. They're a little handheld pump, and they have a gauge on them, a low pressure gauge. I run about 20 to 22 in the rear shocks, and I run about 15 in the front. Consult your manual again. That should be in the owner's manual. So going over the whole bike and making sure that everything's tight, in good shape. What I usually do is I turn all the lights on and turn the turn signals on, walk front to back to make sure that everything's working. Not only is it legally necessary, but it's also a safety issue. And it's your ass out there, man. And dealing with these morons out there in their cages, you have got to use everything to your advantage. So, I've got one of these badass LED lights that flashes when you turn it on. And actually, while we're waiting on the filter to dry, I'll give you a quick show of that. And let's see if I can do that and hold it. And whoops, I think I was holding it in the wrong way. But Now from the back, that's extremely bright, so I always want to have something to save my ass if possible, to be seen. Same thing with bright lights in the front. You want to have, a good filament in there, a halogen filament. I don't think they even come any other way now. And again, certain things like air filter mounts. On this type of air filter mount here, I use blue Loctite. Don't use the red. You'll have a pain in the ass getting it off because these are tiny Allen head screws. And but you want some kind of Loctite, even though heat loosens up Loctite, but it does a damn good job, and this area doesn't get that blazing hot. So anything like that, and I really can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, other than looking at anything loose on the bike, anything that's not safe, take care of it. Don't get on the bike, don't ride this thing unless you're absolutely sure that everything is in 100% condition. And on a major service like what I'm doing here today, usually I'll do a lot of this even during an oil change. I mean, I won't do all the filters, all the fluids, but I'll do the oil change. I do the safety check. I'll lubricate my cables and pivot points. It's a good idea. Plus, you get caught in weather, and you do wash a bike with water, so it'll wash that grease out eventually. And you don't want unlubricated parts on a motorcycle where handling is imperative. So I think that kind of concludes this whole thing. All I've got left to do now is spray my air cleaner, and that's nothing to really film anything about. You can shake these out a little bit if you like, help it dry. And basically you're just coating this with the red spray oil, which is in the recharge kit. And let me say too that the recharge kit, you can probably use it about 7-8 times before so that's a lot cheaper than a filter, and these K&N filters are not cheap. So get the recharge kit, and basically I'm just going to spray it with a light coating until it all turns red again, not dripping, and then I'll put it back on the bike, tighten that up, and I believe that's about it. So if I've missed anything, I'm sure that the comments section will correct me immediately and tell me what a damn idiot I am, because I missed toothbrushing my odometer or something. In either case, yeah, this is an afternoon project for me, and when you get close to the end of it, go ahead and have a few beers. Just remember what you're doing. If you're not sure of it, don't have the beers until you're done. But then once you get it down, go ahead and ride the bike really quick. Well, first you want to start it. You want to check all your oil levels. And now another thing too is Harley's, on this bike, on this particular Harley, the oil is checked on the side stand when the bike's leaning over. The transmission, however, and the primary are checked when the bike is straight up and down. So make sure that you check your fluids after you've done the service to make sure they're topped up. Let it sit a couple minutes after you run it so the fluids settle. And then check it in the proper position, whatever your bike may recommend. And then go ahead and take it for a ride. Just a short ride, maybe a mile or two. Come back and look the whole thing over to make sure that you don't have any fluids dripping out of your oil filter, of your drain plug, anything like that. And if it's fine, go ahead and park it in an area where you don't have any oil spots. If in a day or two you see some oil spots, you either didn't clean up very well or you've got a problem. So I think that's it, gentlemen. I hope this has helped a few of you. And again, I don't think it's going to apply to very many people, but this is a major service, if you want to call it that. And yeah, that's it, kids. I hope it helps you out. And look, if you ride, be safe out there. There's plenty of idiots on the road. Believe me, we got them all down here. I think we got them all. Anyway, all right, have a good day, guys. I'm going to finish up my air filter and have a couple beers. Be good.